From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, I am Estefania Bravo, and this is From the South. A court in Argentina has ordered the preventive detention of the former president, Cristina Fernández de Kirchner, over alleged bribery. The judge accuses Fernández of being involved in a bribery network that allegedly took place during her term in office. Before any arrest can occur, the Senate has to vote to remove her immunity. Many believe this is just another case of political persecution against a progressive Latin American leader. Our correspondent in Buenos Aires, Edgardo Esteban, has more.
As we expected, Judge Claudio Bonadío has ordered the preventive detention of the former president and current senator, Cristina Fernández de Kirchner, for her alleged involvement in a bribery scandal. The investigation relates to the so-called notebook scandal. Some businessmen and more than a dozen officials from the government of former President Cristina Fernández have also been named in the case. This is seen as a political persecution against the former president by the justice system, particularly by Judge Bonadío. Senators and political groups have different views on this issue, but it seems there will be no action to lift her immunity until the judge gives a concrete ruling and produces evidence of the accusation he's making. So the current senator, Cristina Fernández de Kirchner, will continue to enjoy her parliamentary privilege.
That was Edgardo Esteban from Argentina, and Bolivian president expressed his support for Cristina Fernández de Kirchner. In a tweet, he said he rejects the judicial harassment of the sister Kirchner, who has been remanded in custody. The oligarchy wants to imprison and silence her, but will not reduce the love that has millions of Argentines who see her as their hope. The accusations against Cristina Fernández came as the government of Mauricio Macri presented its draft budget for 2019 to Congress. The main aim of the budget is to achieve a zero deficit by 2019, in line with the demands of the International Monetary Fund. Following the announcement, the country's currency, the peso, rose slightly. Since April, the country has been engulfed in a currency crisis and mass protests. The government insists the budget will increase public spending.
We want to emphasize that this is an austere budget, but with clear priorities. While primary expenditures increased 24%, social expenditures increased 32%. The investment on social security increased by 35%. Health expenditures increased by 29%, with expenditures on vaccines and medicine increasing some 94% over the year.
The Congress of South African Trade Unions could elect its first woman president during its 13th meeting. Commissioners will also decide whether to continue supporting the African National Congress. The Congress of South African Trade Unions is taking place in Johannesburg. President Cyril Ramaphosa spoke at the meeting.
The resolution of the 54th Conference of the ANC decided that there should be expropriation of land without compensation, and this should take place without any fail. And it is going to happen, because that is a decision of our conference. We want to utilize this as one of the comprehensive measures to accelerate land reform that will reduce poverty, that will strengthen the economy and increase agricultural output. And for those who think that this program of land reform means that we are going to give land to the elite, I want to make it very clear that our land reform program is not about giving land to the elite. It is about giving land to the ordinary people in our country and not the chosen few. So we will be seeking then to focus attention on ensuring that we improve agriculture, focus on agriculture, and enable our people, our compatriots who are involved in agriculture, particularly emerging farmers, are able to get the support that they need.
My colleague from Moja Media in Johannesburg, Brian Malanga, brings us more details from the conference.
We are at the 13th COSATU Congress. We've just listened to the president deliver his speech, the outgoing president, Duma Dlamini, and he was followed by the president of the Republic of South Africa, who is also the president of the ANC. Critical to their maiden speeches and to what they delivered this morning, they were intertwined. Actually, they had common themes, and what stood out for me this morning, or actually this afternoon, was the whole issue of gender. Gender seems to be top of the agenda at this Congress, and it's really hammered upon over and over again. And when one listens to the transformation that they want to see even in their top leadership, one gets a sense that we will be getting female leaders in the next few days, and we'll just keep you posted and we'll keep our ears close to the ground. But we gather that there are some female leaders that have been earmarked and that are being caucused to be postulated for a leadership position.
The presidential candidate for the Brazilian Workers' Party, Fernando Haddad, has been to visit former President Lula da Silva in prison. He said Lula was delighted with the way the campaign was proceeding, even though he was barred from standing.
Lula repeated that he will not trade his dignity for his freedom. He is convinced that the higher courts in Brazil and international bodies will find him innocent of the charges he was convicted of, because there is no proof. In fact, there isn't evidence that a crime was committed. In addition to that, he praised our campaign and its priorities focused on workers' interests, jobs, and education.
Thousands of people gathered in Sao Paulo on Sunday to demand that Lula be freed from jail. More in this report.
People were indeed merry. They danced and sang together with local musicians. However, their party-like antics have a political side. They took to the streets to demand the release of Lula da Silva after 5 months of imprisonment.
It is important to use art for reivindicating our rights because they are taken away from us, even the right of making art. The coup that happened in Brazil was absolutely misogynist. It was against women in presidency, and now we are resisting and re-existing.
Free Lula's festival has taken place exactly 3 weeks before presidential elections of 7th October. This is the atmosphere right now in Avenida Paulista. Neither the prospect of being fined by Sao Paulo's mayor or the threat of violence could hold back the determination of the Brazilian people who marched to Paulista Avenue.
Fascism wants to take over the country, and we should take care to keep it away from the population. We need culture and art. That's the solution for our country, and not weapons.
Fernando Haddad, a presidential candidate of the Workers' Party, also took part in the festival. Notably, Paulista Avenue was turned into a strictly pedestrian-only zone with a cycle lane, so it should come as no surprise that the festival took place here.
Actually, we did have a candidate who could have won in the first round, but because he was disqualified, we have Lula's candidate. He made Lula's program belonged to his team. He is Fernando Haddad. Our job from now until October 7th is to turn Lula's votes into Haddad's votes.
A few days after his candidacy was announced, public opinion surveys show Fernando Haddad is in second in popularity, and in first place when the people know that he is Lula's candidate.
Cuba's President Miguel Díaz-Canel has said he supports equal marriage. During an exclusive interview with Telesur, Díaz-Canel said that recognizing same-sex marriage is another step towards eliminating discrimination. The new Cuban constitution will define marriage as between two people instead of between a man and a woman.
The approach of recognizing marriage between two people, without limitations, responds to a problem of eliminating all types of discrimination in society.
Díaz-Canel also said Cuba wants dialogue with the United States, but it won't accept conditions.
You cannot have dialogue where one side puts conditions on the other, where you have to give up your sovereignty and your independence. You cannot have talks where one side demands you accept their agenda, and that is what the United States has been doing for years.
But despite the obstacles, the Cuban president says people remain resilient. He also stressed the importance of engaging with the younger generation in revolutionary Cuba.
I think it's necessary for the revolution. Fidel strongly believed in it. He went to universities when he wanted to discuss a problem. He had famous encounters at the Cadenas Plaza at the Havana University during the first years of the revolution. For me, it has been necessary, since I was a youth leader and when I was party secretary in 2 provinces, and when I was Minister of Higher Education. That need to talk to the youth that has so much to contribute and freshen up. To know about their aspirations, their willingness to participate and propose things. That communication is a 3rd pillar that should be part of the new figures. The 4th pillar is that those of us in leadership should know that the answers to our problems are very complex. So we can't talk about one alternative. We always have to find several alternative solutions. Fidel also subscribed to that concept, and the only way to be more effective is to turn to scientific research and innovation. Because many times we investigate but don't nail it down, and that, used as a tool to solve problems, can be used by all leaders to defend their actions.
The South Korean President Moon Jae-in is about to arrive in Pyongyang to hold his 3rd summit with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. These are live pictures from North Korea as people wait for his plane to arrive. Both leaders are seeking to improve their bilateral relations and try to keep denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula on track. Kim Jong-un will be keen to talk about more economic aid from the South. The 2 leaders are also expected to discuss a possible 2nd summit. We'll come back to that when he arrives. We'll be back very soon. Stay with us.
In a world infested by inequalities, abuse of power, and injustice, the American journalist Abby Martin covers the struggle for fundamental rights worldwide, deep into the search of files which uncover the empire's strategies through our screen and web platform in English. The Empire Files with Abby Martin. Tuesday, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. Bolivia's President Evo Morales has asked Chile for calm 2 weeks ahead of an expected ruling in The Hague on their maritime dispute. Morales asked Chilean President Sebastián Piñera to reach an understanding in the dispute. He also said, quote, "The wounds opened more than 100 years ago should be closed." The International Court of Justice is expected to rule on the case next month. Morales spoke after discussing the claim with a number of former presidents.
After the discussion we had today, I'm sure that Bolivia will never give up its claims. We are optimistic because we have the truth and reason on our side. We are seeking justice. That is why I want to tell the press that it is going to be very important for all the Bolivian people. We have a lot of hope in the ruling of the International Court of Justice.
Chile's President Sebastián Piñera has said his country is willing to talk, but he insists the 1904 treaty should be respected, since it's the answer to the maritime dispute. The treaty was signed to put an end to the tensions between the 2 countries, defining their current borders. Bolivia continues to lead the charge for de-dollarization, a move against the power of the US dollar.
Bolivia remains the leader in the de-dollarization on the South American continent, with figures nearing 100% of the national currency used for savings and transactions, according to the first semester economic report from the central bank.
We can proudly say that at this time, more than 98% of bank loans are made in our national currency, and more than 87% of deposits in savings accounts are also made up of Bolivianos. This is something that no other country in Latin America has achieved before.
A decisive factor in maintaining economic stability and a strong national currency is that exchange rates have remained under control. The dollar has cost 6 bolivianos with 96 cents for the past 7 years.
Más del 98%.
Achieving and maintaining stability in currency exchange is one of the requirements for economic strength.
The stability of the national currency, the boliviano, contributes to people's confidence.
While other economies have dollarization levels in the 50 to 60% range, Bolivia records nearly 0% after suffering through dollarization levels of nearly 100% back in 2004.
These factors have made it possible to strengthen the economy. It is expected to be one of the fastest growing in the region, growing 4.4% this year alone.
We have registered the lowest inflation rate in South America. High growth and low inflation is a very difficult combination to achieve. But data from August shows that credit disbursed through the financial system to the population is the highest ever.
Another outstanding fact about the financial sector is its ability to maintain low interest rates. The interest rate at the Bolivian Central Bank is a mere 0.5%.
Haiti's Prime Minister Jean-Henry Sant and his cabinet have been sworn in. The new government was ratified with 84 votes in favor, 5 against, and 4 abstentions. On Twitter, Sant asked Haitians to join forces for the happiness of the country. But the announcement of a new cabinet has fueled protests in the capital, Port-au-Prince. Fire demonstrations erupted on Sunday following the ratification of Sant as Prime Minister. Protesters burned tires, blocked major roads, and vandalized properties. Special forces had to be called in to quell escalating tensions. The government of Guatemala has reaffirmed its decision to ban the head of the International Commission Against Impunity from the country. This comes after the Constitutional Court unanimously overruled President Jimmy Morales' decision to ban him from entering Guatemala. Just over 2 weeks ago, Morales expelled the UN mission that was investigating him for alleged corruption. The decision prompted several protests. The remains of 157 unidentified people were left unattended in a trailer near the town of Tlajamulco in central Mexico. Many of the bodies are believed to be victims of Mexico's war on drugs. They came from a morgue in the nearby city of Guadalajara that was at full capacity. After locals complained about the smell, the trailer was removed on Saturday. Mexico has seen over 30,000 murders last year. Most of them were gang-related. Our correspondent in Mexico City, Pablo Perez, reports.
Yesterday, a trailer with the remains of 157 bodies was removed from the town of Tlajomulco in the municipality of Jalisco. The prosecutor's office admitted the bodies were deposited there in a refrigerated box instead of a warehouse due to the lack of capacity. After a few hours of being abandoned there, residents of the area understandably started to complain about it. This prosecutor's office is the same that has been waiting for the construction of a crypt with a capacity for 700 bodies in the municipality of Tonala. They promised this could be a solution for this case, but it is important to note this was not the first time this kind of thing has happened. There were similar cases in the municipality of Jojutla, in the state of Morelos, where unidentified bodies were deposited without any kind of procedure. According to Alfredo Lecona of the organization Security Without War, this is a sign that the institutions are unable to handle the consequences of the violence that exists in Mexico.
That was Pablo Perez from Mexico City, and as we mentioned earlier, the South Korean President Moon Jae-in is just arriving in Pyongyang to hold his third summit with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. These are live pictures from North Korea as his plane is arriving. Both leaders are seeking to improve their bilateral relations and try to keep denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula on track. Kim Jong-un will be keen to talk about more economic aid from the South. The two leaders are also expected to discuss a possible second summit between Kim and the U.S. President Donald Trump. And 1 year after Mexico's earthquake, residents of collapsed buildings are still homeless. Several victims are living in tents. They are urging the authorities to help them return to their homes. The earthquake killed over 350 people and flattened dozens of buildings in Mexico City.
It's been very hard on us. First, because we still don't have a building solution, so it's been a bit hard.
It's been very tough, seriously very tough, but I haven't had recurring dreams curiously. However, it's been very, very terribly hard.
Former trade union leaders at Ford in Argentina are suing the company's former bosses over torture. They say they were detained in the company's factory and tortured by members of the military dictatorship 4 decades ago. The union leaders were held in prison for 2 years. They say the former executives were complicit in the 1976 coup d'etat and the 7-year-long military dictatorship.
We were taken away in the worst way. We were held for 40 and 60 days, a year under national executive power and enduring all kinds of torture.
We are the voice of those who will not and perhaps never will see justice for the 30,000 people who disappeared as well.
We'll be back very soon. Stay with us.
Telesur brings you special interviews with social and political personalities. Monday, from Washington. Tuesday, from Mexico. Wednesday, from Caracas. Thursday, from Quito. Friday, from Havana. Analysis about our continent's reality. Weekdays, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. The United States will impose tariffs on $200 billion worth of Chinese goods as a retribution over Beijing's trade practices. The new income taxes will apply to more than 5,000 imported goods, including rice, textiles, and handbags. They will take effect in 24th of September, initially from 10%, but eventually increasing to 25% starting from next year. China had already affirmed it would retaliate if the U.S. imposed further tariffs. The Trump administration has announced a cut in the number of refugees admitted to the country to 30,000 in 2019. The new cap for refugee resettlement will be the lowest since 1980. This move is a significant crackdown on the influx of refugees, considering the quota was nearly 85,000 in 2016.
The United States anticipates processing up to 310,000 refugees and asylum seekers in fiscal year 2019. We propose resettling up to 30,000 refugees under the new refugee ceiling, as well as processing more than 280,000 asylum seekers.
Russia and Turkey have agreed to create a buffer zone in Syria's Idlib. Presidents Vladimir Putin and Recep Tayyip Erdogan reached an agreement to separate Syrian government troops from rebel forces in part of the Syrian province. All heavy weapons will be also withdrawn from the area. The demilitarized zone will come into force by October 15th.
We both agree that implementation of the planned steps will give a new momentum to the process of resolving of the Syrian conflict politically, allowing us to intensify work on the Geneva platform, and that will contribute to peace returning to Syrian soil.
Together we will ensure the detection and the prevention of provocations by third parties and violations of the agreement. With this aim, Russia and Turkey will carry out coordinated patrols on the borders on both sides of the demilitarized zone, which will be designated.
At least 100 people are presumed dead after several houses were buried in mud after a landslide caused by Typhoon Mangkhut in the Philippines. Rescuers are digging into the mountain of mud with their bare hands to recover the bodies. The Category 5 typhoon swept through the country with winds of 200 kilometers per hour over the weekend. Floods in Nigeria have killed over 100 people. Heavy rains have also forced thousands to flee their homes. The center of the country has been the most affected. Government is urging residents to relocate to safe places. Demonstrators have blocked roads and shut down businesses in Ethiopia's capital, Addis Ababa. They are angry at the killing of 23 people in the outskirts of the city over the weekend. Protesters are challenging Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, who has undertaken aggressive reforms regarding security. They are urging the government to stop violence. And we leave you with pictures from North Korea as the South Korean President Moon Jae-in is just arriving in Pyongyang to hold his third summit with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. They also want to improve their bilateral relations and try to keep denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula on track. Kim Jong-un will be keen to talk about more economic aid from the South. The two leaders are also expected to discuss a possible second summit between Kim and the U.S. President Donald Trump. And with that, we've come to the end of this news brief. These and other stories, as always, you can find them on our website at telesurtv.net/English. And also join us on social media, on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram. For Telesur English, I am Stefania Bravo. Thank you for watching.